balloons, bazookas, boobies, bosoms, boulders, cans, hooters, knockers, melons, honkers, jugs, rack, tatas, tits, torpedoes, guns, bust, doorknobs, coconuts, and our favorite one, the girls. Welcome to the All About Breastfeeding show, where your host, Lori, highlights mothers just like yourself and goes beyond the surface questions and digs deep so they share not only their joys and happiness in their daily breastfeeding life, but also their pain and struggles and how they worked through them.
Episode number 192. Welcome to All About Breastfeeding, the place where the girls hang out. I am your host, Lori Jill Isenstadt, IBCLC, which stands for International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. I would love to welcome everybody back to the show, a start of a new season number 6. I have a lot to talk about today. First, I'm going to catch you up on some personal news in the Isenstadt family happenings. We suffered a great loss while on break from the show with the passing of my father-in-law, who would have been 92 years young in 3 months. He has lived a very long and healthy life, despite being diagnosed with Parkinsons in his late 60s. His disease really began to affect his daily life probably about 10 years ago, and the last 3 have been incredibly difficult for him with much suffering. So, along with his passing and our sadness, there's also an overall sense of relief that we feel about a loved family member who is no longer in pain and no longer suffering. What really struck home to me is observing my kids' response to his passing. You know, I remember being a mother of very young children, and, you know, in your daily life, you're trying to teach them lessons, you're trying to teach them kindness, compassion, be fair, be helpful. There are a lot of things that I really wanted to be able to pass on to my kids, have them learn, try to do our best, but any mother who's listening to this show can probably relate to the fact that we're always thinking, are they getting it? What are my kids going to be like when they're growing up? Especially when you go through hard times with your kids. Well, these last few weeks, it's been interesting to watch my kids. My 2 daughters and my son are all adults and living on their own. My 2 daughters are married, and they live local. And it's been hard watching their grandpa lose his ability to enjoy his everyday life. They've had a hard time watching him struggle. They visit him often, and they're able to see that the most simplest of daily tasks, like dressing and eating and walking, have become difficult to almost impossible. But the kids have been a huge help, and they've been very present in their grandparents' life. With his passing, however, we all know that the hardest part lies with the loved ones who are still living and the memories that they have. Without even asking, my kids immediately took off from work, not knowing if there was even any bereavement benefits. They've been spending a significant amount of time with their grandmother, sitting with her, holding her hand, giving her hugs, and sharing grandpa stories, laughing, crying, remembering, and sharing some special memories. What has really struck me and warmed my mommy heart is to see my kids give of themselves so easily and without question. As I watched them over the last few years with their ailing grandparents, I realized that I have not once had to encourage them to visit or call them or take them out to dinner or help them with household tasks that needed to be done. They would just drop off, they would bring food, they would bring dinner, sit and have a meal with them. When they were younger and playing at a friend's house, my friends used to mock me because I was so distracted from our adult conversation. I just loved watching my kids. And I watched with amazement my kids interacting with other kids and adults. It was back then, when they were young, as I watched them, that I really got it. That is, the kids really do watch their parents and other adults around them. They're observing and listening and taking it all in. They watch us as we perform kind gestures towards others. They watch and listen as we fight and argue with each other, even raise our voices. This is okay. It's real life. Please remember, though, they are very observant as to how we resolve these issues. They're watching us make up with each other, problem solve, the language we use, the tone of our voice, the gestures we make. They're smart, and it's all being filed away. Some of our actions they will role model early in life, at times when we least expect it, and other actions may not be seen for years later. While I will never know for sure, because who can play Monday morning quarterback and have a redo about this stuff, I do believe that the closeness that I had with my 3 children through breastfeeding, lots of cuddling in between feedings, hand-holding, lap-sitting, kissing, hugging, singing, playing, laughing on the floor together, along with their observation of Alan and I and how we handled ourselves in front of them, our relationship with each other, providing a house full of love and laughter, how all of this, how they took it all in, and how this is a big part of who they are today with each other, with their life partner, grandparents, co-workers, and yes, even with strangers. I believe it all starts at home. So as I watched my kids offer comfort and support these last few weeks, I remembered my role as a lactation consultant, and yes, as a podcast host. I'm reminded how important it is to share with parents just how important your role is, and that while breastfeeding is very important and for so many reasons, that no matter what you feed your baby or how you feed your baby, it is all the hundreds of hours in between feedings that parents and extended family members provide to our kids. Spend lots of time holding them, cuddling with them, singing and laughing, being close, being present. Putting aside electronic devices and just be with your babies and your kids. Electronic devices, they are so incredibly addicting. However, how our babies and our kids in this generation, how are they going to learn about love, kindness, caring, empathy, socialization, conflict resolution? With kids, if the adults in the lives, they often have their eyes and ears paying closer attention to all the noise rather than focused on them. I have gently reminded many moms to put down their phones in the early days of breastfeeding. Honestly, these days will fly by, I promise you. Your window of time where you can stare down and memorize every little feature, every little hair on your baby's face and hands and feet, it will be fleeting. Your window of time when they want to cuddle and just be with mommy will be gone in the blink of an eye. Cherish these moments and be present for every feeding. Believe it or not, they are already listening to you, watching you, feeling your presence, feeling our love, and wanting more of you. They are taking it all in, and it will be a part of their makeup. It will all have an impact and be a part of the adult that you observe years later. I am humbled by my kids and love them more each day, particularly when I see what fine young adults they've become. I can't let this opportunity go by without giving a warm hug to my husband, who has been the primary family caretaker for his parents these last few years. His role in their lives has been front and center, and he has been a blessing to his mother during these last few difficult weeks. Alan, I love the man you are and the loving son you continue to be for your mother and, of course, the father to your kids. Okay, well, that may have been more than a glimpse into my personal life. However, I don't know about you, but listening to someone over the air kind of makes me think of them a bit like a friend or family. When the host shares something personal, it makes me get to know them even better. It humanizes them and just naturally helps me enjoy the show that much better. I only hope that the same goes for you. On another note, as many of you know, I took a bit of a break. I made sure that you were kept entertained and informed by providing you with several of our most popular shows the last few seasons. If you don't know this yet, I recorded over 180 shows to date, and you can still access every single one of them, and they're all free. The pleasure has all been mine to have great conversations with healthcare professionals and book authors as well. Whenever I sit and contemplate this educational library that I've recorded, I am amazed at the volume I have to offer you now. I appreciate every single one of the posts and emails and messages I get from moms and lactation consultants and students who tell me they've learned so much from the show. Hearing this really just makes my heart sing and continues to validate the work that I'm doing. Thank you so much for all who take the time to do so. I appreciate you. And yes, I'm also patting myself on the back a little as I remind myself that I am meeting one of the goals when starting this podcast, which was to educate, inform, and advocate for the breastfeeding family. One of my other goals I set out to accomplish was to not just preach to the choir only, so to speak, but to educate everyone that is outside of the immediate breastfeeding world and who perhaps just doesn't understand this whole breastfeeding thing. This list includes employers, other employees who may not understand why you take breaks to pump. I want to get this information out to retail stores and community leaders. My belief is that moms should be able to breastfeed wherever and whenever they feel they need to, without fears of being criticized or kicked out of places or stared down. And I know we have laws on these issues, but people can and still do ignore the law. We see this happen all the time with mothers getting kicked out of places or told they can't breastfeed their baby in the mall, the restaurant, the store, the pool, whatever. Coworkers, they still snicker at moms when they go to pump. They still feel like they're getting away with something. Of course, not everyone. But this really just cracks me up. I dare these people to follow any breastfeeding or pumping mom around for a few days and then look me in the face and tell me they're getting away with something. For goodness sakes, people, these moms have taken on another part-time job. We need to make breastfeeding much more visible, with moms breastfeeding all over the place, in many places when they're out and about. The more it's seen, the easier it will be to normalize breastfeeding as just part of the fabric of everyday life. A breastfeeding mother should not stand out in a crowd. She should just be another person in the room. We're still working on becoming a much more breastfeeding and family-friendly society, and I aim to be one small part in a positive movement to do so. I would also like to thank everyone who does understand the breastfeeding mom and tells her she's doing a great job. On another note, I love competition, and I like to compete with myself and with others. A question for you. Have you taken any of the shows that you've listened to, and have you shared it with someone you know who can benefit from listening to it? If not, why not? Please don't keep all this information to yourself and have it be the best kept secret. No, we want as many people to know and understand the ins and outs of breastfeeding. Do you remember what it was like before you breastfed? How much you thought you did know, and the realization once you got started, and how much you realized you didn't know? Think about how happy you would have been to be able to access all this great info from the show. How great it would have been for you to hear other mothers' breastfeeding journeys. During times of hardships and struggles, how much hope it would have given you. Remember that, and I'm asking you, put on your thinking cap. Who can you share this show with? Think of 2 people this week. Put their names down on a paper or a text message to remind yourself. And the first chance you get, send them a link to the show. This is the best way I know of spreading the word, of taking the each one teach one way of living to a higher level. Let us think not only of ourselves, let us think, how can we best help other moms? Just think, what would you have wanted to know? What are you angry about that no one told you? Let us all do our part and share the show. Feel free to join our All About Breastfeeding community by going to Facebook, searching for the 4 words, All About Breastfeeding Community. And on Monday, August 7th, I'm going to start a post in the group asking you how many people you have shared the show with. You don't need to name them if you don't want to. Just tell me your number. Let's enter into a healthy competition to see who can share the most. Believe it or not, I am still not done. In other news, we have a great season 6 ahead for you. Just to name a few interview topics for you to look forward to. One very cool guy who shares his expertise about breastfeeding from a guy's perspective. Being that he is a midwife and a lactation consultant, yep, you heard me correct. Well, I would say that he is well equipped to share his insights with us, and you're going to find it really interesting. Be prepared to listen to a really cool, interesting interview with a mom who gets real with us and shares with us the dark side of breastfeeding by being truthful about her personal experiences. Have you ever wondered what it must be like for a mom that has suffered an infant loss? What happens with her milk supply in the first few days after birth or weeks later? Another hard-hitting story that I don't want to shy away from reporting on. On Friday the 11th, we are going to have our first FAQ of the season. This one is going to be quite informative as it is on the latest CDC guidelines for pumping and storing your milk. I do get on a bit of a rant, so you won't want to miss this one, but it's not too bad. On Monday the 14th, we are going to get that midwife and lactation consultant from a male's perspective. That's going to be Monday the 14th show, and he will share with us some tips on how to get dads involved with breastfeeding. As for the rest of the season, well, you will just have to tune in and listen for yourself. If I have not said so before, I appreciate every single listener, and I strive to do my absolute best in bringing to you real life information from real parents who speak their truth. It's really important to me that we don't just talk about all the joys of breastfeeding. We need to balance this with real life experiences. This helps us to know that we're not alone, that other people do care, there is help, and when things are going well, that you can find a great group of people to share your joy with, and when you're struggling, you have a safe place to come to as you gather information to help yourself. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. I will leave you with today's quote that really speaks to one of my personal philosophies about mothering my kids. If you want your children to turn out well, spend twice as much time with them and half as much money. Until the next show, everyone, bye-bye.